Who is universally loved, but actually an asshole? This question needs an explain your answer added to the end. Before it became public knowledge, I always had to tell people what an asshole Bill Cosby was 20 plus years ago. Ellen's fall from grace has been well deserved and overdue. Edit. Just to clarify, she's not a comic book villain like Bezos or Dick Cheney, she's just an immature narcissist with zero tact or grasp on reality. There are plenty of good clips compilations on YouTube that shows her wildly out of touch behavior. My personal least favorite is her singing to a sleeping baby in a drugstore through a megaphone as the horrified mother is in complete disbelief. Well, she was always off, that's why most fellow comedians didn't associate with her much even when she got famous. Jerry from Tom and Jerry. I've got my suspicions about Steve Harvey. The audacity to be married like 4 times, then write a book about marriage. Duck, you know about marriage, Steve? What does Steve Harvey not know about marriage? We asked 100 of his ex-wives. Top 7 answers are on the board. Wilson. The way he just floated away at the end like their friendship meant nothing. What a dick. Such a smug look on his face too. What a total prick. Lamau, I thought y'all were talking about Wilson from Home Improvement and was so confused what his face looked like. Dr. Phil. He takes advantage of mentally ill people for money. Edit. He isn't universally loved, but he is very successful and is good at hiding his dark side. I lost all respect for him after hearing Todd Herzog's story. For those who don't know, Todd won Survivor at 22 and suffered from alcoholism in the years following. He went on Dr. Phil in 2013 and they gave him vodka and Xanax. His appearance on the show was, not great. Fortunately, he's turned his life around and got married a couple years ago. Damn, I lost all respect for Phil, I don't call him doctor, when he had the guy that was running the Bum Fights website on. Phil was hoping to lay some sort of righteous smackdown, but the dude showed up dressed exactly like Phil, bald spot and all, and when confronted about how he exploits other people's suffering for monetary gain, dude just fired back, "Isn't that exactly what you do?" and was promptly booted off the show. Interview over. Phil was butthurt because a degenerate called him on his shit on national TV. That was an iconic moment that doesn't get enough respect. Jimmy Savile. Was loved. Died. Found out he was a child predator. Rachel Ray. Loved her show until I went to see her live. In between takes she was a very not nice person. I knew someone who did production work for Food Network in the early 2000s. Most of the personalities at the time were actually pretty lovely, but apparently Rachel Ray was borderline despised by the film and production crews. She was just generally known as a mean person to work with. I had one of her cookbooks because I found it at a thrift store. It was just unnecessarily confusing. Instead of steps, Therese paragraphs. She has no idea how long prep work actually takes. In the 15 seconds the garlic is sauteing before adding the oysters, zest 3 lemons. That kind of stuff. Next, you'll want to slaughter your cattle, but don't let the garlic burn in the meantime. Old reference, but Gary Berghoff aka Radar from MASH. Apparently he was notoriously hard to work with and generally an asshole to the movie and show cast and crew, but his character was so beloved that viewers never thought he was like that. On the flip side, poor Larry Linville, Major Frank Burns, was known to be an extremely nice guy, but got sneered at and generally treated like crap by the public due to his character in the show. Just goes to show you should separate the art from the artist. I grew up near Gary. He lived in my hometown for a long time and had some kids when he was quite old already. I went to school with his son in the early 2000s. Have met him and saw him around a lot. Can confirm he's a total dick. And you cannot call him Radar. He'll flip his absolute shit on you. I have a friend who lived next door to him in Paradise when he was still up there. He sounded like an absolute nightmare neighbor. Steve Harvey. For those who want to know, watch his interviews on Women and Atheists. He's cheated on his wives, physically abusive, acts like religion is the only thing that between him and killing and raping people. Martha Stewart. I witnessed her call her assistant and I quote, a worthless piece of shit. No one should be called that for accidentally dropping her handbag. Edit. I also offered Martha a bottle of Fiji water and she said she only drinks Voss. Was waiting for this. I work in the aviation industry and have for 25 years now. Back when I was still fairly new, I was working line service for an FBO, fixed base operator, The folks who provide handling services for private corporate aircraft. One day a plane comes in after dropping a passenger off in Maine. The crew needed someone to clean the airplane, and the job fell to me. The plane was trashed. Food ground into the carpeting, garbage all over the place, pet hair everywhere. Took me a few hours to scrub the inside of that plane. The crew thanked me, and gave me a $100 tip after. Then the captain said to me, "You'll never guess who made that mess. Martha Stewart." I was in shock. He said she was the biggest bitch they had ever flown, and both the captain and first officer said they would refuse to fly her in the future. I am now an airline pilot, but I have several friends who went into the corporate private fractional side of aviation. Martha Stewart has been kicked out of every fractional jet ownership program there is: Raytheon Travel Air, Flight Options, NetJets, FlexJet, and several others, all because of her abusive and downright nasty treatment of staff. Heard the same thing from a friend who is in the fractional side. Worst celebrity ever. Tim Allen lived near me for a while. Always a pompous ass. However, the gentleman who plays Gus Fring on Breaking Bad is a real good guy. Remembered my name and says hi to me when we run into each other at Whole Foods. He also tipped the cashier at WF $100 just because. Ironic. He remembered your name, but to you he is the gentleman who played Gus Fring. Not sure if they are universally loved, but I used to work in restaurants for the House of Mouse, and both Howie Mandel and Bobby McFerrin were total jerks. Acted like they were completely above everyone else, and both of them let their bratty kids run screaming around the restaurant, always smart when people carrying hot trays of food are everywhere. I had a lot of positive celebrity interactions, but those two were awful. Can't stand to listen to Don't Worry, Be Happy since. I can confirm Mandel was a total asshole. I work at a restaurant in Toronto that threw some party for some game show, and he was such a dick to everyone, to the point no one wanted to help him. He made some snide comment about who he is, and I said, "Oh, that's nice, but these other folks were still here before you." Heard of a similar comeback to this in the late 90s Ibiza scene. The current DJ flavor of the month was in a bar expecting free champagne and pulled the "Do you know who I am?" routine. Bar lady apparently replied, "Yes, and you earn more than the rest of this bar put together. Pay up." Steve Jobs. It's pretty well known that he was a giant asshole, but he's still pretty romanticized in the tech sphere. I got to have a chat with Steve Wozniak, and while there was still an air of respect, Wozniak said Jobs had a great way with words marketing the bows on a product. It was definitely underlined with a disdain for certain personality traits. He also made a lot of this clear during his presentation too. Side note, Wozniak was a frickin' delight to talk to. The dude just oozed enthusiasm and such positive energy overall. The fact he even spent like 15 minutes talking to me after the convention was awesome in itself. There were hundreds of people there, and I bet most of them could have given him a more topical, engaging conversation. In fact, I mostly just wanted a photo with him. He was the one that engaged in a longer conversation. Can confirm Wozniak. Worked with him on Dancing with the Stars, got to ride around on Segways with him. His was souped up, could go over 35 miles per hour, incredibly badass as far as Segways can be such a thing. If it weren't for the fact I had to get back to work, he'd have stood there talking for another 20 minutes with me chatting. He also handed out his personal metallic, laser-cut business cards with his home phone on it to a bunch of us, claimed it could cut steak, told us this not to impress us, just to warn us how sharp they could get. I never had the nerve to call him to talk, but just wow. I don't know if Hess just that open or just wants people to call so he has someone to talk to, but I walked away for spending almost 2 hours with him as a genuinely nice human being. Never faltered for a second. He ended up leaving the show due to hairline fractures in his ankles, but he lost 40 pounds during production and said it was the best exercise of his life. David Dobrik is probably one of the most tragic ones, not only cause Hess a piece of shit, but because even if he was a great person, it's depressing that people even care about that content and actually watch that. Plus, indeed, Hess a piece of shit abusive sociopath. From what my fianc told me is that Bianc is extremely entitled and rude to people. He worked in a restaurant where many celebrities would go to, and he loved most of them but absolutely hated Bianc and Jay-Z. Remember when she had an entire hospital wing closed so she could give birth? It wasn't an entire wing of a hospital, but it was an entire section of the maternity ward. In some ways that's worse. How many pregnant women were turned away? Additionally, her hired goons, bodyguards, would stop people from entering the entire maternity ward and tell them they couldn't come in, even if they had every right to be there.